Well, good evening. Welcome to the premiere episode of DoomTube, where we're going to talk about how bad things really are and how bad things really could get. It's New Year's Eve. This will be up on the 1st of January 2025. We just got news of the power outage down in Puerto Rico. And of course, it's brought everybody back around to being concerned about the grid and the fragility of the grid. And EMPs and CMEs and grid down situations, and rightfully so. It's one of the worst things that could happen. Matter of fact, it's what I wrote my book series about. But I don't think that most people really understand how bad it could be. When my first book came out in 2017, The Reversion, I kept it kind of clean. I wanted it to be a family book. I didn't like the books that I had seen already put out in that. I didn't think that they covered things very realistically. And I wanted one that would approach a very negative subject in a very positive way, but also hold true to what could actually happen. So I did the best I could. From that book came the next book and the next book, and now it's 7 books. But I didn't get down into the nitty-gritty. And that's what I want to get into now, tonight. I talked about slavery. I talked about cannibalism. I talked about the people that would die within the first, weeks, months, and 12 months. But I didn't talk about the specifics and the true horrors. So that's what I want to touch on tonight. And that's what I'll be touching on in future episodes here on DoomTube. Issues and topics that people kind of have a tendency to skip across the top, like skipping a rock on a pond. Because that's all that really a lot of people know. It's the deepest that many people want to go. But for those people who really want to go deeper and understand more, that's what we're going to do. I said in a video earlier today that people's imaginations are limited by their experience. And what I meant by that was, you can imagine a unicorn, right? But what you can imagine in the real world is really limited by your own experience. That's why people who come from backgrounds like mine, when we try to talk about some of the true horrors in the world with people who have not experienced them, it kind of goes over their head. Either they don't believe it, or they don't want to hear about it, or they certainly can't understand it to the degree that we would hope that they would if we explain it. So for those of you who are truly interested in preparedness, who are truly interested in how bad things could be, let's talk about this, okay? A grid down situation is just about the worst thing you could imagine. And some people will say, well, I think that a nuclear attack would be worse than that. Well, matter of opinion. Would you rather go in a flash or watch your children starve over a period of months and watch everybody around you? So let's really think about what happens. I write about it in The Reversion, and I write about it in the other books too. But I just want to put it in kind of a capsule here for those who really want to think about it. Now, the EMP Commission, whenever they put it, it was a 2001, 2002, something like that. They estimated a 90% die-off in the affected area within the first 12 months after a grid down situation. I'm not going to argue with that. Probably going to be higher in some areas, lower in others. Kind of depends on a lot of things. But people haven't really gone down and thought about how do those deaths occur? And then how do you prepare yourself to keep yourself from being one of them? Imagine that the grid goes down. Doesn't matter whether it's a terrorist attack, a EMP, a CME, and it doesn't matter. Grid goes down. Immediately, everybody who depends on technological health care is dead or dying and will be dead soon. All across the country, thousands of people in critical care units, intensive care units, many in emergency departments will die. Nursing homes, people dying. Thousands, tens of thousands of people immediately dying across the country, across whatever the affected area is. Thousands of people trapped in elevators. They'll be dead because there won't be enough people who will be able to get them out. Think about dying in an elevator after being in there because nobody could get you out. I've gotten a lot of people out of a lot of elevators, but the elevators that we had, you could get into, and we knew how to do it. There's no trap door in the top of an elevator like you see in the movies. And if you don't have people available with the proper equipment who know how to get a stalled elevator open, you're not going to open it. So all across the country, there's going to be people now slowly dying in elevators in the dark. They're going to be in there for days, dying. There will be some people that will try to help them. There will be some people in the facilities units of wherever it is, whether it's a hospital system or a university or an office building. Office buildings don't usually have stand-by facilities managers who are going to go through and get everybody out of elevators. So think about that. In the dark, no food, no water, no help coming. Nobody knows that you're there. Now, whether your car runs or not, and when my first book came out, the pretty much the common thought was vehicles won't run. Well, it depends. More information, new information has come out since then. Say that, well, many cars will probably run. Many will stall, depending on whether it's a CME or an EMP, and I'm not going to get into that now. Even if your car does run, where are you? Thousands of people, millions of people are going to be away from home, whether it's across town, across the country. If people are out of town, if people are across the country, they're not getting back home. Airliners aren't running. The highways, the streets are going to be jam-packed with panic. There's going to be no traffic lights. There's going to be no police service. There's not going to be no fire service. There's going to be no emergency medical service. People are going to be on their own. And if you want to see a mess, see a whole bunch of people on their own without direction who are frightened and don't know what's going on and don't know what to do about it. So many people will be separated from their families. And they'll never get back. They will never get back. And their families who are left at home, maybe, will be trying to survive without that one who is probably a very important part of their survival. Could be a husband, could be a wife, father, mother, doesn't matter. But without that person there, their chances of survival just went into the tank. Now, within a day or two, the more built-up areas, the cities, people will be wondering what's going on. At first, people will expect there to be help coming. They won't have any idea how widespread it is. Ham operators will have an idea. Other people will have some idea how it is, but the average person won't have any idea how widespread it is. They'll know that they'll hope that help is coming. They'll know in their minds that help is coming because it always has come. And so they'll wait. They won't know what the deal is. After a couple of days, people are going to start to get worried. They're going to be out there talking to their neighbors. They haven't had any clean water to drink because the water pumps stopped when the electricity went down. They haven't been able to get any more food because the grocery stores shut down or were looted. The average person just has a few days of food in their house, and that's, like I say, that's after they go back in the back of the silverware drawer and find the ketchup packets that somebody shoved back there. Most people aren't prepared. So after a couple of days, they've run out of water. And they've thought about the things that they've heard, like, well, we can get water in the toilet tank, or we can get water out of the hot water heater. For the very few who have heard those things, and most people haven't. So they're not going to have any water. They'll be run out of food. Even the ones who thought that kind of kept a full pantry, they're going to be out of food in a week or two. And then you're going to have a situation with millions of people, no food or water. If it happened at a time like this, in the beginning of January, can't heat their houses, unless they have wood stoves and things. But we're talking about the majority of people. Now, there will be some who live outside the cities who will do okay for a while. If they live rurally or if they have heat with wood, they'll be doing all right for a while. Preppers will be doing okay for a while. But then people start to get antsy, and they'll wonder what they should do. Some will try to get out of town. Maybe they have an aunt or an uncle somewhere, lives on a farm. They'll say, well, let's try to get to Uncle John's house. But they'll find that when they start to drive, it's a mess. There's cars have run out of gas all over the place. There are people out there looking for food, looking for water. There have been groups coming together, trying to come together to help each other. And any moving vehicle is going to draw attention. In the cities and in the suburbs, the good people will wait. And they'll starve to death. You see, the average person, I know that there's this idea that people will do anything in the world to stay alive. Now, I write about this in my books, but I take a different tack. They'll do anything to stay alive or to keep their children alive. Some people will. Most people will starve. They'll wait long enough to where when they get to that point, to where they might be a danger to others, they're not strong enough to be a danger to others. Many people will starve to death and die in their homes. The people in the cities will have a lot more resources to draw from. People have this idea that people in the country and small towns have all the food. They don't have all the food. Most of the food that we eat comes, that doesn't come from overseas, comes from corporate farms. Doesn't come from family farms, doesn't come from small farms. And so the average rural dweller, might have a big garden. They probably they can, and they save, and, they live a life that's more traditional than the people in the city. But most of them aren't as prepared as some people think or like to think. But let's go back to the cities before we get back out there. The cities have a lot more resources. And what do I mean by that? Well, they have gangs. They have organized groups. They have organized gangs that are very violent and not only are used to, but enjoy victimizing people. They'll go after the weak ones. These are animalistic people, and they will go after the weak ones. And what you'll see is an increase in assault and murder, sexual assault, sexual slavery, cannibalism, forced cannibalism. Most people don't have any idea how cruel and how evil many people can be. They say they do. But if you haven't dealt with it, and 95% of people in this country have not dealt with it, you don't have any idea. And so people really don't know. And I know that because of my experience and how shocked people are, who otherwise think that they know pretty much what's going on in the world. And then when they come up against something truly cruel and evil and animalistic that comes out of another human being, they just can't believe it. That's the truth. In the cities are the major food warehouses. There will be gangs, there will be groups, some police groups, some fire groups probably, that will come together, and they know where those warehouses are, and they'll take them over. They might help distribute food out to other people. They might not. It depends. There's good people, there's bad people. But there's a lot of resources in the cities. And so while a lot of people will die, a lot of people will come together as groups, as very strong groups, and do fairly well in an animalistic world for a while. Then what happens to them? Well, in these groups, there is always ego and power struggles. They're made up of people with type A personalities, and you get a bunch of alphas together, and it's always a fight as to who is going to be in charge. And they'll start killing each other. And there will be gangs going against gangs and groups going against groups. And they'll whittle each other down quite a bit. Until finally, either they coalesce or they're so small that they're not really going to be a danger to many other people outside the cities. And in the interim, they've killed most of the people who were essentially victims. If they try to come out through the suburbs, there's a lot of people in the suburbs with guns and with abilities, and they're not going to get out through the suburbs out into the country. They'll kill a lot of suburbanites. The suburbanites will kill a lot of them. They'll weed each other out quite a bit. But what about the country? They're going to be better off in many ways. First off, they know their neighbors, and it's not like people in the suburbs and city don't. They do. There's this idea that people in the cities and suburbs don't know their neighbors. That's not at all true. And there's this idea that people in the cities and the suburbs don't pull together and don't work together and don't like each other. That's not at all true. That's a fable that's passed on by people who don't know. But the thing is, as much as people in the city and people in the suburbs will try to support each other, they just won't have the resources to do it. And as the weeks and the months go on, more and more of them are going to die. But the strong groups, there will be groups, whether in the city or outside, groups are already formed. I won't get into detail what kind of groups these are. They're going to see this as the opportunity to do everything they've ever wanted to do, but didn't do because they were afraid of the law. They are not afraid of the law, let me put it differently, because they just didn't want to, there was too much of a chance of getting caught. And I will tell you that I'll probably be doing an episode on serial killers one of these days. We've had a couple of real beauties here in Kansas City, Bob Berdella being one, Johnny Robinson, if you're familiar with them. And here again, like I say, the average person can't even imagine the screwed up mind of a true sadist and the joy that they get out of victimizing other people. And those people and psychopaths, they survive at a much higher rate than normal people because they will do the things that normal people balk at. And finally, as society crumbles, there will be more of these groups solidifying, run by a strong leader. And the leader will be someone that these other animals are afraid of. And that's the kind of personality that most people have never even met. Some of us have. The small towns will be safe for a while. But when one of these groups decides that they want to go out to a small town, there's nothing that people will be able to do to stop it. I know there's this idea that rural and small town people will stand up and come together and keep them out. You don't know what you're dealing with here. You are dealing with animalistic, subhuman people who are smart. They're not just coming down the road. in a big group, so that, you know, if you're writing a movie about this, you'd have all the good old boys come out and block the road with their trucks and stop them, right, and have a fight. That's not going to happen. They'll come in, home invasions, terrorizing, taking people, abducting people, holding hostage, torturing people. It's beyond the ability of most people to imagine. And if you are one of those who lives out, you know, down the country road by yourself, and they happen to find you, you don't have a chance. You do not have a chance. I don't care how many deer rifles, shotguns, whatever, you don't have a chance. You get a large motorcycle club. Now, some of the guys are pretty good guys. I know a lot of guys in motorcycle clubs. I worked undercover motorcycle clubs. I know quite a few of them. I rode with some of them. Some of them pretty good guys. Some of them aren't. And if you happen to be unlucky enough to be in the path of those who aren't, your life is going to be a living hell until the day you die, and the day will come when you die. So, I've given just a brief description. I haven't really gone into how horrible it could be, but I hope that you can imagine. So what do you do about it? Well, you have to be prepared. That's what I talk about on the other channel. That's what I talk about on integrative preparedness, how to be prepared. That's what I wrote a whole series of books on. But I don't think that most people take preparedness seriously. You know why? Because they don't take the threats seriously. And I know that because I have talked to thousands of people over the years in the preparedness circles. And when I talk to them, I see they don't have, I won't say they don't have a clue. They do not have any idea of the reality. It's easy to say, well, 90% of people are going to die in a certain area, right? And this and that and the other thing. If I wanted to explain to you how I have seen people die, and there's other people on here who will have the same experience, the horrible things that some people have done to other people, it'd make most people puke. They don't want to hear about it. They don't want to think about it. As a result of not really getting down and thinking about those things. Thinking about, I mean, we live in a world now to where we have 300,000 missing children who have come across the border. We have people making a lot of noise about human trafficking and sex trafficking and things like this. But does the average person really think much about it after they go to that movie and then come back and talk to their friends about how terrible that is? No, they don't. They don't, and they don't even have a clue. Most of you cannot imagine the hell that would descend in a grid down situation on the people who survived. The ones who have died of starvation or bad water or getting shot, they're the lucky ones. The others are going to be kept alive in a living hell by animals. That's the truth. So what do? Well, that's why I wrote the book. You have to be prepared. And this isn't really a preparedness channel. You want to know how to be prepared. Go to integrative preparedness. But you need to be prepared. You need to be self-sufficient. You need to either live outside of the built-up areas, cities, suburbs, or have a place to go. I myself live in the suburbs because I like it. We have a lot more opportunities here, a lot more resources than they do in the country. And actually, in many ways, it's safer. And I prefer that. But if the grid went down, we wouldn't be here. We would go to where we go. So you either need to live outside or have a place to go. And then you need to be able to be self-reliant. Now, that doesn't mean just having enough cans of beans. That means you have to have the entire menu. Food, water, shelter, protection, people. And they have to be the right people. Can't just be a bunch of people. They have to have the skills. I won't go into what I have in my circle. Medical skills, fighting skills, gardening skills, animal skills, building skills, electrical skills, engineering skills. The more you have, the better off you're going to be. But when it all comes down to it, preparedness, whether it's stocking beans or growing beans, will keep you alive until you have to defend it. And then that's where the real test comes. Are you able to defend against these animals who will eventually find you? Because they will. They will. You cannot hide out there. You cannot hide. If you live out in the woods, you got 50 people. Okay? Well, let me ask you this. How many of them are fighters? I mean real fighters. Not just somebody who carries a gun. And be honest with yourself. How many of your people are overweight? How many of your people have health issues? Can they run up the mountain and then still fight? Or are they going to die of a heart attack on the way up? I cover all of this in my books. If you really want to know about that, I'd suggest you at least read the first one, read the version. I'll put the links to a lot of those things down below. I always do it on the other channels, Integrative Preparedness. So I'll put those links in case you would like to look into those books. I call them the complete plan for preparing for, surviving, and rebuilding after a complete collapse of everything, because without rebuilding, you're simply going to live a horrible life from then on. Now, I did have somebody, I saw a comment on a video that I made today on another channel. I heard somebody say, well, I've heard that we're going back to the 1840s if that happens. No, we're not, they said. We're going back to the Stone Age. Well, that's not true. No, we are going back to the 1840s, just about, pre-electricity. We're not going back to the Stone Age because we haven't lost the knowledge. See, that's what enables people, that's what enabled the story in my books, why they were able to rebuild, because they had a group of people, as I do in my group, a wide variety of skills and knowledge bases. That's what you need. If you don't have that, the possibilities of you surviving a real grid down situation that lasts a month or more is very, very slim. And that's the honest truth. So, that's what we're going to do here. We're going to talk about the real things. The real doom. Everybody likes to talk about it, the headlines, but they'd never go deep enough. There was a scene in my book where a gang has taken over a place and cooks the bodies of the people to keep eating. Feeds them to the ones that are still alive, that they're keeping alive so that they can eat them later. Do you realize that's what could happen? I hope you do. I hope if you didn't before this, I hope you do now. I hope you will think about it. Because it's up to you. Whether you live or die is up to you. Whether your children live or die, whether the people who depend on you live or die, is up to you. All right. Remember, most people have no idea how bad is. And no matter what you think, it's worse than you think. Y'all have a good night. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.